All right, welcome back to Autodesk Digital Builder Podcast. I am your host, Eric Thomas. Today, we are once again coming live from Autodesk University, and I did not forget my friends this time, even though I'm sitting up here by myself. This is a quick recap on doing over 130 episodes of Digital Builder, and at the tail end, I'll reflect a little bit about some of the fun things that have come out from this delightful week at Autodesk University. But first and foremost, construction is an industry that's built on experience, but it's evolving faster and faster than ever. And during my time working at general contractors, technology startups, and now Autodesk, I've seen firsthand how much has changed from our paper-heavy workflows to cloud-based collaboration. But one thing that hasn't changed is the importance of people throughout this entire process, especially learning from others. And so today, in reflection on all of the great things that have happened in the last 5.5 years, I want to take a look at the 5 biggest takeaways that we've had from all of these conversations. First on my list, mental health is paramount to the construction industry's success. At the front of this, we had a wonderful conversation with Mark Dyke, a tenured construction professor at Ferris State, episode 79, if you haven't listened to that one. And I'm going to quote directly from him here in a moment, but I do also want to give a little trigger warning. We're going to mention suicide and mental health in a moment, but the quote from Mark says, "Suicide in the construction extraction industries is the highest of any industry. If you take all of the deaths in construction due to falls and hits, suicide is still 5 times higher than that." But addressing mental health in construction starts with open dialogue. And it is uncomfortable to talk to, but it shouldn't be. And I just want to make sure that people are out there listening. And if you have a chance to go back and listen to that episode, please make sure you do, because the message from Mark is incredibly powerful, but mental health, first and foremost, incredibly paramount. I also want to look back at episode 71, and we spoke with Amit Oberoi, the executive chairman of the Considerate Contractor Scheme, or CCS. And Amit said, "It's the only thing you truly own," referring to your health, and you need to prioritize your own health. Outside of that, please make sure you go back and listen to those 2 episodes. I think this is the most important narrative, and regardless of what industry you work in, construction or otherwise, we really have to make sure that we're taking care of our people, and that really starts with ourselves. Technology adoption alone is not enough. Tech is a must in construction, of course, but it isn't effective without a clear strategy and very intentional cultural buy-in. So for your digital tools to improve outcomes, you have to be strategic with how we implement technology. And if you listen to Digital Builder, you'll likely hear me say that time and time again. I joke that I have a square jar on my desk every time I say intentionality, and I think that comes across the board regardless of what tools or tech you're considering adopting. Also, make sure you don't lose sight of the fact that it's people, not software, that ultimately drive this change. You don't lead with technology first. You have to lead with culture and people and process, and then the technology follows from there. It's a really difficult thing to get right, because you have to train, you have to bring people along with this or along this entire journey. But in the end, ultimately, the technology really does help foster a lot of the improvements that we're trying to find throughout the construction industry. And I have to say, change isn't easy. And tech often introduces new tools and new processes that disrupt our familiar workflows, but you can manage this by investing in thoughtful, ongoing training and support to help your teams adapt confidently. Third, will be no surprise to anybody who's been paying attention here at Autodesk University this year, but AI has a role in the future of construction, but your team needs strategy and guidelines to drive successful adoption. I think there's no question about the fact that AI is transformative. It streamlines workflows and helps teams analyze and uncover insights faster than ever before, but there's a lot of noise in this space, and we have to be deliberate as we adopt these tools. A lot of announcements came out at Autodesk University this year. I'm going to touch on those in just a minute, but I think what it really means is we have to be strategic as we adopt these new tools, bring in AI governance, strike teams, and a lot of other things. I've also had a ton of conversations with leaders across the industry this week. AI came up in almost every single one of those discussions, and for good reason. And I have to be transparent here. 1.5 to 2 years ago, I was a lot more skeptical of artificial intelligence myself. But the transformation and the transition of this technology has been so rapid and so interesting. if you're still a skeptic, I think it's worth to go back and take a look at the technology, because the ChatGPT or the AI assistant or whatever you might have been looking at that time has likely changed a considerable amount since you last took a look. And so it's worthwhile to do your due diligence there. Up next on my list, hiring. The labor challenges continue to be challenging and struggling to find new talent, but I think there's a path forward. And a lot of that does come back to my favorite swear jar word, intentionality. The labor shortage is top of mind for everybody in construction. Demand is growing, firms are struggling to keep up, and the competition is fierce for finding people. And I empathize with organizations that aren't sure how to manage and maintain that. I had a really wonderful conversation with folks from Kimley Horn and Wake Tech College earlier this week. We talked about the intentional pairing and partnership between their organization at Wake Tech and bringing people directly out of university and being effective after a 2-year program. I think you should check that out when it comes out in the coming weeks, because the deliberateness behind how they're informing their programs to make sure they're effective and the impact that it's having at Kimley Horn can't be overstated. But with the right recruiting strategies, construction firms can attract all of that talent that they need. I think the fifth one that I'm going to bring up today, careers in construction, they're not so linear. I've told this before. I come from construction. I work for a number of general contractors as a proposal manager. I don't have a degree in construction technology or anything along those lines. And I feel like my entry in the industry was largely an accident, coming out of the Great Recession and just needing to find a job. And I'm so fortunate to be at the helm of Digital Builder today. But all of those steps, working at GCs, working on small proposals, finding my way into construction technology, and eventually Autodesk, have had a big impact on every single conversation that I get to have. And some of those really interesting career paths, if we have a chance to look back retrospectively, they're not the ones that we expected when we set out and walked out of university. And it's never going to follow a straight line, no matter how intentional we're going to be. But as they evolve, you're going to discover new strengths. You're going to find out new exciting things to work on. And when you look back, it's a lot of fun. And I think worth really exploring how you found your way to where you're at today. I'm going to look back at episode 95, specifically featuring Erin Psyche, a superintendent at DPR Construction. She started her journey with a degree in civil engineering, a very typical path into project management. She found that her strengths were better suited for the field. With DPR support, she pivoted into a superintendent role, which is not typical for folks with the civil degree. And now she leads complex projects. She finds new strategies and is really thriving in her role. And so you should go back and take a peek at that episode if you haven't listened to it, because I think it's a really great example of stepping into something. If it didn't feel like it was going to be a good fit, you can make a change. And I think that's really exciting. All right, so we're going to get into Autodesk University, which is my favorite part of the year. I call it my Super Bowl as far as the privilege to talk to so many incredible leaders across the AECO industry. I want to touch on a couple of big announcements that came out this week. I'll be honest, I'm not a product guy, so I'm not going to go very deep here, because you're going to be better suited talking to others who are going to be able to give you more. But the name of the game is Forma is now the first comprehensive and AI-native AECO industry cloud. It connects design, construction, and operations in this unified environment. Part of this, of course, is we're bringing Autodesk Construction Cloud into Forma. It's going to create a seamless connection between design and construction workflows. But as I mentioned before, AI really drives this efficiency and creativity. And Autodesk's announcements with Autodesk AI are going to continue empowering our professionals, automating repetitive tasks and enabling them to focus on creative and high-impact work and doing away with a lot of the tedious, more less interesting aspects. So I think we're going to unlock a new strength with design in particular in AI. It's going to empower creators at all levels to go do something unique that just works. And I think we're really seeing a wider industry movement towards AI-driven design more broadly. Of all of these announcements, I think I'm most excited about what's coming out with the Autodesk Assistant and agentic AI. And so if you think agents, most people think ChatGPT or something similar to that. And here at Autodesk, we're doing something very similar, but very intentionally designed for the workflows and tools that everybody is using across the AECO space. Of course, Autodesk Assistant came out last year. We were announcing that at AU. Today, it's going to better connect ACC users to move faster, collaborate, and have a lot of cool outcomes. A lot of the thing behind the scenes, of course, MCP servers. If you didn't catch my conversation with Ben Cochran earlier this week, That episode's going to come out in the coming weeks. And MCPs are really going to change the game because the depth that we're able to integrate our tools and our workflows, I think this is really stepping into this futuristic sci-fi level conversation that was likely promised at the early days of artificial intelligence and hasn't really felt real in the recent years. Today, I think we're even closer to that reality, and I'm pretty excited about what AI is going to be bringing to the table. Finally, I think we're just going to become more connected than ever before. Our workflows are going to go deeper. The way that we work and the way that we collaborate is going to change, but I think it's going to make us more effective and more efficient, and I'm really excited about that. And finally, I just have to say, as of the end of this week, we'll have recorded over 130 episodes of Digital Builder. And I am so privileged and thankful to be at the helm of the work that we're doing here. It's been an incredible opportunity. I joke, I've learned more doing Digital Builder in 5.5 years than I actually about construction than I think I learned actually working for general contractors, which is a ridiculous thing to say. But the level of access to folks that I've had and the privilege of learning from them in a really unguarded way has changed my life, and my enthusiasm for this industry continues to grow with every single conversation. So I'm hopeful for another 130 episodes, but aside from all those wonderful guests that have joined me across the years, I have to say the listeners and the viewers of this show and the folks that are sitting in front of me right now, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. And so I have to say, thank you so much. Thank you for coming up and saying hello, introducing yourself. It warms my heart that people are out there listening and paying attention. And I think the more that we have the opportunity to have meaningful conversations like the ones that we're having this week, I think the better our industry is for it. And AECO, people are just so willing to share and deliver really interesting perspectives and insights. And we're not going to make this change alone. This is a change that has to happen across the entire industry. We have to work together, and I'm incredibly excited for that. So again, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for joining me. Here's to another 130 episodes. I really can't wait until Autodesk University next year. But in the meantime, make sure you reach out. You can find me on LinkedIn. And if you're wondering who this guy is up on stage talking to himself right now, I am Eric Thomas. I host Autodesk Digital Builder Podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you can find your favorite podcasts. Until the next time, goodbye.